Welcome to Life on Purpose, where we talk all things health, wellness, and living your life on your terms. I'm your host, Brandy Eilert. I'm a holistic health and wellness coach and creator of Brandy Eilert Wellness, where I help women with adrenal fatigue and chronic stress live a more holistic, purpose-filled life. You can find my content and services at wellness360coach.com/Brandy-Eilert. You can also find me at Brandy Eilert Holistic Wellness Coach on Facebook or Brandy Eilert Wellness Coach on Instagram. Now get ready to learn how to really live life on purpose. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a bit of a rough few weeks over here. This time of year is always really difficult for me personally. My husband, who works in college basketball, is gone a lot. I live in a state where the sun rarely shines in the winter, and the cold and snow make it difficult and uncomfortable to get outside a lot, compounded with this crazy, unpredictable time in history. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of getting tired of living through historical events. It can really weigh on a person, and I feel like I've let the stress of it all get the best of me, when before I had a pretty good handle on all of it. Guys, it took me nearly a year of this to crack, so I guess maybe it's not as bad as it could be. But I really think all of these things have contributed to this autoimmune flare-up that I've been having for the past few weeks, that I can't seem to get a handle on this time. It's nothing crazy, nothing like it was at the beginning of my diagnosis, but I've been having the terrible heart palpitations again, feeling tense and anxious. But the worst of it is the joint pain and inflammation and the muscle pain and stiffness. And it's made it difficult to get good sleep. And I'm one of those people who really needs good sleep. So I've been feeling a bit run down and tired too. So I've really buckled down on what I'm consuming. And by consuming, I mean what media I'm taking in, what information I'm taking in, on top of what I'm physically consuming. Which I've changed just a little bit, nothing too crazy, just some more anti-inflammatory foods and supplements. But if you know your downfall areas, your weaknesses, you know where you need to reevaluate your habits. And mine is information and not processing my fears and emotions properly. But that's a story for another day. So because I'm a naturally curious person, I have a lot of questions about so many different topics, and I love to research and I love to learn, but it can be too much. It can be too much at times, and I can forget to turn it off. And this is a big trigger for me. So when I sat down and I really thought about it, I found that the only things that I was reading, the only things I was watching, and if you personally know me, you know that I love to read. I always have. It doesn't really matter what it is. It was scientific studies, health-based books, books on hormone health, books on chronic pain, health protocols, articles on government and politics, deep dives into certain parts of history, and the list goes on. Like, it's just crazy what I can kind of like dive into and get caught up in. But it was too much. So I intentionally drove myself to the nearest bookstore and bought a stack of fiction books that had nothing to do with anything but entertaining and relaxing me. And then I made a plan. I made a plan to also do a social media detox. So I deleted my social media apps, and I've really committed to focusing on nothing but my family, my work, and my health, period. So I'll keep you posted on how that goes. And if that is indeed the trigger that perpetuated this flare up, we'll kind of see. That's the funny thing about, kind of taking your health into your own hands. You can kind of use yourself, as an experiment. Basically, you can kind of experiment to see what it is that's not working for you. So I'll keep you posted. So because my physical health has been forefront on my mind, I thought I would spend these next few episodes focusing on guests with practical information on these physical ailments that have been plaguing many of us. We're a sick nation, guys. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I think it's fair to say that what we're doing is not working. So it's imperative for me to be able to share alternative ways to look at health, alternative ways to think about health, and alternative ways to treat yourself. It's literally the only reason I started this podcast. It's the only reason I became a health and wellness coach, because I shudder to think what my life would have looked like had I not been fortunate enough to find these practitioners that put me on the path to true health and wellness, that put my health into my own hands. It's extremely empowering. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I am never, ever, ever here to put down traditional Western medicine where Western medicine is necessary, essential, and useful, ever. There's a time and place for both of these areas in medicine and healing. That's not what this is all about. I've touched on that in a couple of past episodes, and I just want to be crystal clear on that. So, one such practitioner that I have followed for a couple of years now and whose information has been useful to me and so many others is Justin Janoska. Justin is a clinician and the founder of the Autoimmune Revolution, an emerging company that guides women in their healing journey to reverse their autoimmune disease and reproductive disorder. Currently, Justin places specific attention on Hashimoto's, IBD, multiple sclerosis, PCOS, infertility, anxiety, eating disorders, and trauma. He holds a master's in human nutrition from the University of Bridgeport and has done postgraduate work studying mind-body medicine for the past 3 years. This has become an integral part of his teachings and work with his clients. Through the therapeutic relationship, he helps clients acquire a deeper understanding of how they got here with their illness, supports them with their pain, to be with their pain and embrace their truth. Ultimately, Justin is deeply committed and on a mission to help revolutionize how we address and heal women who are struggling with autoimmune disease. I appreciate Justin's no BS approach. I really like his ability to kind of really dig deep with his clients when something isn't working. And his approach to health, to me, the way I saw him is that there's no one size fits all, not to mention his wealth of knowledge. So in this interview, we had a couple of technical glitches, so I apologize for that, but it is with great pleasure that I share with you this interview with Justin Janoska. All right, Justin, thanks so much for coming on today and diving deep into all things autoimmunity, especially thyroid. I've been following you, like I said, for a couple years now, maybe. And I really like what you do. I really like your kind of no BS approach to all this, and kind of really your ability to really kind of dig deep into the matrix that is autoimmune thyroid disease. So again, I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't I just go ahead and have you introduce yourself and let us know, about you and about the Autoimmune Revolution and everything that you do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the quick version of this, I would say, is because a lot of times I get this question of, well, why are you doing this? Why do you work with women? Like, you're a guy.
That was actually going to be one of my questions.
Yeah. And believe me, I didn't wake up one day and decide I just wanted to do this because I was bored. So I was already trying to go down the health path in grad school to help women, or people rather, with cancer. I wanted to do alternative medicine with cancer. So I knew I wanted to help people, but I shifted towards autoimmunity and Hashimoto's because my mom has it and was diagnosed pretty much around the time I had entered grad school. So she wasn't getting any help with these endocrinologists that she had seen for 6-7 years. And so I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And I was already learning it anyway in school. So I'm like, wow, there's a lot to this that she's not aware of and that doctors aren't aware of. I need to impart this information. And I just decided to, help her out along with what she was doing with her naturopath. And that was great. Obviously it was a step in the right direction. But it still was lacking a lot of things. There are a lot of shortcomings with alternative medicine still, which is what what I've learned after witnessing this enough times, which I could go deeper in. But yeah, so that's why I decided to really dive into this. And I mean, literally, it changed my life and my career and everything. It was the best decision I ever did, was doing this. But yeah, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my mom, 100%.
That's a really nice like tribute to your mom, and I'm sure it changed her life as well. Because I can't imagine that you would go down this route of working strictly with, I mean, primarily women, and we can dive into that a little bit more later. But you must have seen some sort of results, and she must have seen some sort of results that changed her life to where you would want to continue on with this.
No, yeah, for sure. Because it's just so common. It's like what Hashimoto's is pretty much the number one most common prevalent autoimmune disease in the world. So I kept seeing it show up at my doorstep with clients who were reaching out as I was kind of transitioning into autoimmunity, and even being in the clinic. And I was working at a clinic with an MD after grad school. I had worked with a lot of people with these issues, and so I was already seeing how common it was. I'm like, wow, this information needs to get out there still. And even with all the efforts we're doing, I'm doing, other great people in this field, there's still many women and people in the dark with this, thinking they're doomed, can't get better. It's just the doctor's word, do this medication and a story. So there's no shortage of people that need help, and we need more people out there to help them. So
You're absolutely right. I mean, I was one of them. I remember when I was first diagnosed, actually with both Hashimoto's and Graves' disease. And I was told by one of my physicians, point blank, and I remember this is when everything shifted for me. She said, well, we just have, I said, what can I do? Because I'm one of those people, like, I need to know how to fix it. And she said, well, there's nothing that you can do. We just have to wait for your thyroid to burn out, and then you can be on medication for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, that can't be it. That can't be it, right? But so many people just accept that, and it is so much easier just to pop a pill and go on with your day. And it's unbelievable what kind of discomfort and unhappiness and pain and fatigue and crap that we can live with on a daily basis, that we tell ourselves, oh, this is just the way it's going to be now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, this does need to be out there. And I was shocked that it's not more mainstream, which is again why I wanted to have you on, and I want to have other practitioners on, to put it out there, like, there is hope. Because I feel like we're on the other end of the spectrum, mainstream wise, of there is no hope. This is what it is. There's nothing you can do. You're going to feel like crap for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And that's the biggest challenge. I say it all the time. It's not so much what we do to help them or what I can do and what's available. It's actually having the conviction, or making sure or hoping that they have the conviction and trust that they can improve and get better. That's the biggest hurdle.
Right. Because no matter what you do, what you tell them, how you work with them, ultimately it's going to be the client or the patient or the person that has to make the changes, that have to implement the things that need to be implemented to feel better. Ultimately, it's going to be in our hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're not going to get better if you don't believe you can. And
Right.
I always say this, it begins with intention. And if you don't have one going into this, or you believe it's all going to fail and fall through the cracks, and you're not going to get improvement no matter what you do, because you have this story in your head thinking nothing will get better because your doctors told you that and they said it's in your head, or you've had poor experiences with other doctors and practitioners, then you're going to manifest that. And then it's like, then what?
Right.
So that's the biggest challenge. Yeah.
Right. It's a battle. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with your mom. How did her, like, she was your first case, right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
How did she get better? What was it? So she had Hashimoto's. Explain to me. I mean, I know what it is. Explain to the audience, what is Hashimoto's? What is autoimmune thyroid disease? How does it manifest? And then let's talk about your mom.
Well, I mean, simply the deal with Hashimoto's and Graves, for that matter, is you have an immune system that does not know how to differentiate between foreign tissue or foreign antigens, proteins versus self proteins and self tissue. So that's a genetic component for sure that is involved, but it's largely lifestyle. Well, let's make that really clear. These diseases, and pretty much any autoimmune disease is lifestyle driven. It's like pretty much been well established in the literature. We know that because twins could have the same genes, right? They do, obviously, monozygotic twins, and yet one of them will get autoimmunity, one won't. Yeah. Right? Why is that? Because of lifestyle. So it's pretty much, I mean, I don't know the numbers exactly, right? 85% we'll say, but give or take, it's lifestyle driven. So, but for a lot of people, the disease manifests much later. It's a very slow, disease for most of these. Not all autoimmune diseases are like this, but especially Hashimoto's. It's a very slow process. So you have antibodies in the blood, and they take a while to really kick in the rest of the immune system. And then you get diagnosed, like most people, stage 3, which is there's severe destruction, there's loss of function, massive symptoms, whatever. And then, they decide to check antibodies, then they're there, lo and behold. But they were already there for the past 9-10 years. And so we don't check that. And those are predictive antibodies that we can check. And imagine our healthcare system. And if we did that, how many people we would be able to prevent or be able to forestall autoimmune disease or stop it in its tracks. So
right, which is another interesting thing because, and I don't think people understand also that the large portion of people with thyroid disease actually have the autoimmune portion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I read it was upwards of like 90% of people who have autoimmune thyroid disease. So, or thyroid disease is autoimmune. It is those antibodies that is slowly destroying the thyroid, but people don't understand that. So, your healthcare professional is not necessarily checking antibodies. And I remember mine one time said, well, it doesn't really matter if you have the antibodies or not. This is, well, kind of
to them because it doesn't change their approach. That's why. Yeah.
Right.
That's important to understand because people will think that, well, okay, I guess it doesn't matter, but it does.
Yeah.
But it doesn't to them because their therapy is not going to change. It's still going to be levothyroxine or Synthroid. So you need that, but that's not the only thing you need, right?
Right.
Change the immune system just helps the destruction.
Sure.
So, but yeah, anyway, I mean, with my mom though, I mean, she honestly had been dealing with autoimmunity for probably at least 20 years because she had brain headaches and migraines since I was a kid, and it was in bed all the time. And there's no doubt in my mind that now that I look at it retrospectively, that she was dealing with brain autoimmunity. Probably we didn't have evidence for that. We can run tests now. I don't think they existed back then, but you can check for brain antibodies. They often are there for a lot of people with Hashimoto, surprisingly. You have brain fog, forgetfulness, inflammation. Doesn't mean that's the case. Low thyroid hormone can do that in and of itself, but a lot of times they're dealing with brain autoimmunity. And I bet you she had brain autoimmunity during that time. And wow, guess what? When we got her Hashimoto's under control, she doesn't have migraines anymore. So, that's what I'm saying. And of course, that's just all tied in with the other root issues, a lifestyle that triggered the aberrant immune response in the first place. So she was dealing with all that. But I know even way before she got sick, when I was born pretty much, she had a very stressful life. And this is the whole trauma thing that I get so involved with now these days with clients. And it wasn't because of my mom that I did this. It was actually from my own personal experiences with relationships, actually, ironically. But it just kind of reinforced the reason for me that we need to integrate this discussion, because a lot of people, or most people I would say, are dealing with some emotional traumas or challenges or pockets of pain that have not been addressed or identified. So that had a huge role in her disease and the stress of it all, and even just kind of the conditioned stress response that she still has. And I noticed, and a lot of people don't get out of that, and it's why it's so hard to really get in remission, or at least stay there for long term. So I don't know if that answers your question. I'm just kind of rambling, but like, that's the whole idea, is that there were a lot of things, a lot of antecedents that got her here, but we can do so much now, and we have done a lot. And what do we do? I mean, this is the $1 million question. There's a lot of things, but I can tell you it was a lot more than diet, supplements, and medications. And those are those surface level interventions I say all the time that people think are going to magically fix them, but you tell me if that's working for you. Because if you still have symptoms, then let's be honest about it, right? Not to say that you're wrong for doing it, but it's just not enough. And that's my point, is that there was so much more that needed to be addressed that was not being addressed, even with introducing her to the alternative medicine side, which was very helpful and needed. But I learned from her experience that there was so much more that needed to be uncovered, which is why I guess I'm so passionate about it now.
Right. And what's really interesting is that taking the integrative approach, as far as, yes, obviously being having a very clean, healthy diet, making sure that your vitamin and mineral levels are optimal, is going to help anybody with any kind of disease. But again, there's this kind of immeasurable part of it, the trauma part, the stress part, quote unquote lifestyle stuff that you can't just take a pill for, that and nobody likes, and I say this all the time on the show, nobody likes to look at the dark parts of their lives and have to deal with it. I was one of those people, like, something bad happened, I'm cool, I can tuck it away, keep trucking. And it was a huge issue for me. And it was one of those things that for me to get better was a huge component of healing. I did all that other stuff really well, and I still do it really well to this day. But it's that other, dealing with that other stuff, that when things start to creep up for me, it's always stress. It's always all that other stuff, that past trauma stuff. So, and we've been so conditioned to, okay, you got a pill for this, I'll take that, I don't have to think about anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do these things. It's not easy to completely flip your lifestyle around. It's not easy to deal with past traumas. It's not easy to even recognize them sometimes. But you're right. It's this huge component to feeling better, to getting better. And it's like this puzzle. So what do you do when you have somebody come to you wanting to heal? What is your process?
You got another hour?
I do.
So, yeah, I mean, the first thing that has to happen, I can just be honest about it because I do this every time, and because it has to be this way for me, is we have to look at your biography and your history and see kind of what happened, because I think a lot of people do that, but we're missing things, and how you go about that is a different discussion. But a lot of people go to doctors and they don't even have that discussion. My mom didn't, which is why I was so irritated. I'm like, we're missing so many other things here. If we actually look retrospectively, we could have found that, oh yeah, this and this and this happened and that happened. And that's maybe what is filling up this bucket for you today and how you got this autoimmune disease, right?
Yeah. So
we have to ask the question, well, how did you get here? What's your story? And a lot of times people will say to me, if we're talking about childhood abuse or trauma in general, oh, I had a great childhood. My parents were excellent. I had great friends. My social network was awesome. I got this in school, whatever, this trophy, whatever. Cool. It's awesome, right? But it's not those things that are the issues necessarily that could have been, but other small, subtle trauma things, like maybe you were picked on in the 5th grade because from your friends in recess, or maybe you were yelled at by your school teacher for being late to class, and that left an indelible mark. I talked, I think yesterday on Instagram, about secondary trauma and how that's this sort of other thing too. Do you think a lot of people are experiencing that after 2020? Yeah.
We all are.
You know what I mean? I know that's what I'm saying. Like, we're not really any different. We're all dealing with something. It's just to what degree and what's the magnitude of it. Reading headlines on the news and seeing the riot at the Capitol, like, that could be traumatizing for somebody, right?
Sure.
So it's all relative, but the bottom line is, like, these are the things that people are overlooking and don't know that could be living in their body, and that's in the body bears the burden.
I imagine that'd be really kind of trippy for somebody who is so used to kind of the traditional medicine model. Somebody comes in and starts wanting to know about them. I mean, because, right. You go into the doctor and it's like in and out in 5 minutes, like, draw some blood, let's look at your blood work, and then problem solved. but you dig a little bit deeper. So not only do you want to know about like the biology, you need to know the story too, to kind of weave it all together. So
Yeah,
what
exactly.
are some of, what are the triggers? What is necessary? What do you have to have for autoimmune thyroid disease to manifest? What is, I mean, and I ask this question because it is a complicated question, because I don't think that people quite understand that there is not, it's not a, this is a definitive thing that you have to have and everybody has it. And this is, you know, the protocol. There's a one size fits all protocol. I think that I don't believe that whatsoever. But what are some of the things that most patients have in common that have autoimmune thyroid disease?
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. There is no Hashimoto's protocol. There's only the Brandy protocol or the Janoska protocol, and figure out what that is. So if you go into this thinking there's a protocol, I had somebody ask me yesterday, actually on Instagram, about what's your protocol for alopecia. I'm like, honestly, that's the wrong question to ask. No offense, you know, it doesn't exist. It's just so, and that's to the point of the two people with Hashimoto's in front of me, the same issues that caused the root causes for that person are not going to be the same as that person. And on the other end, the tools and things we need to get them better are not going to be the same things you need. You know, it's just, that's the way it is. There's such diversity between anybody with the same condition. So the things that create the landscape for autoimmunity like Hashimoto's, well, the genes obviously are there, which is not the concern. I probably genes for me, and maybe I'm living in a way that, and like a lot of us are, we're living a lifestyle that is preventing that manifestation, right, from happening. So that's good, and we do our best with the knowledge that we have to make that happen. But if the genes are expressed because of exposures, like stress being the biggest one, in my opinion, and what I think research shows, there are other things that accumulate over time. Toxins and metals and plastics, BPA, dioxins, phthalates, maybe some mold, maybe some Lyme disease, maybe some, who knows, right? But it's never, and people think that and I hear this a lot. It's like, I need to go see a specialist for this toxin, this environmental toxicity I have. I got to go see some specialists for this Lyme. Now I got to see a specialist for my mast cell issues or my histamine issues. Like, okay, but understand that these are all different components of the same larger picture. And if you fix that one thing, first off, it probably won't make that much of a difference because it affects all the other stuff. And you have to see it as one tangled web. Okay. It's all pulling on each section in one way or another. And so this is the frustration that people, I think, have, which is why I'm saying it, not blame anybody for doing this, but this is why it's not helpful to look at one thing in isolation. It's not that way. It's all connected. So each of these different things, the infections, the mold, the pathogens, the toxins, they all, metals, they're part of the larger bucket, right? People don't get autoimmune disease or Hashimoto's from one single thing. It's not caused by one thing. It's not because you ate gluten last week or because you got, an infection last month. It may have just been the tipping point where the bucket was already filled up to the brim, and then that one thing pushed it over the edge. And you get coronavirus, for example, which is known now as a trigger for autoimmunity. And then all of a sudden you get autoimmune disease or you get a flare-up. That's where people then associate this disease they now have to that thing. And I'm like, no, it's not that. You just finally got it because you had enough stuff in your system and it got to a point where you reached the threshold that's overflowing and here you are. So we got to be really clear about that and honest, because it's complicated. And that's why we're saying this, because we want to attribute Hashimoto's to one thing and make it simply about doing one intervention or some protocol, but it doesn't work that way. It's really complicated. We don't know everything about it still, but understand that there's a lot of underlying factors that just come together and they assimilate. And then over the years, they kind of just aggregate and get amplified with other things. And then all of a sudden your immune system becomes very dysfunctional. It loses its tolerance. And then you become reactive to more and more things.
Okay, so then let me ask you this, and this was something that was always kind of a question in the back of my mind. There are a large number of autoimmune diseases, and autoimmunity in itself is your body attacking a certain tissue or other part of your body. Okay. So why the accumulation of these things then does it choose thyroid, and why in particular women primarily?
I don't know the reason. I don't know the answer to the first question about why the thyroid's a hot target.
Yeah.
There might be some literature on it. I actually haven't probably bothered to look or seen it in my findings, in my research, but yeah, it is an interesting thing, isn't it? Why is the thyroid the hot target?
Right.
Why
Right.
not like my spleen, or,
Well, I mean, I can't walk down the street in my neighborhood and not run into a woman who
Yeah.
has, autoimmune thyroid disease. It's crazy. It is a crazy large number of people.
I know it is. It is. So I don't know exactly the reason. I mean, there's maybe some theories about it and how the thyroid looks identical to a lot of other things, and that's part of
and right now you're right. It is just theories, and it would be nice if, because something is so prevalent, we would maybe spend a little money researching why this is happening to so many of us, because this is I mean, it can destroy people's lives. And I will say my situation, I was not nearly as bad as some women that I've spoken to. Fertility issues, like chronic fatigue issues, like really destroying the quality of people's lives. And it's frustrating that it can be just passed off as, oh, it's just so common that, we're not going to spend the time or the energy or their money trying to figure out why it's happening. But the one thing that is kind of commonplace that people and specialists and doctors and other functional medicine practitioners are pointing to is that it is an accumulation of our environment and our lifestyle and everything that we accumulate, whether it's toxic emotions, whether it's toxic water, whether it's toxins in our food, whether it's toxins in our makeup or body care products or whatever. It's an accumulation of junk that we live amongst. It seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, our environment has just changed, and food, agriculture, all these things, like why gluten's such a issue for a lot of people now. I mean, all those sort of things, and it just man-made things and things we've done in the world that have, I guess, combined with our genetic expression, have not been too favorable for us.
So let's talk about genes then, because kind of going backward, obviously you mentioned that genetics is a huge component, which to me makes sense. My mom also has Hashimoto's and lupus. I have Hashimoto's. I have a daughter that I worry about. She's 10 now, but so, there's all these genetic components, but genes can be turned on and off, correct? And that can be kind of the situation with like twins you were mentioning. Why do they turn off in one twin and not the other, or turn on, or whatever it is? Can you speak to like the gene expression part of the disease?
Well, I can only talk about it so much because there's a lot that I don't even know, but there's still a lot science doesn't even know with this. But we have to think about what genes we're talking about, because there's so many involved, and it's not just and a lot of it is the immune system, like genes that are related to the immune cells that are designed to make immune cells, and there's defects in certain parts of the immune system, and that's a lot of what we all have something like that, but that's the challenge. And then you get hit with a trigger, and then it somehow just creates for a natural disaster, right? So it's a deeper sort of thing, but that doesn't speak to the fact about females being having autoimmune disease more than men necessarily, but just the reality that there are genes that we all have, and why we get it, why you get it and I don't. I mean, because we're not even like we're not even like mapping this out. We're not checking for SNPs and polymorphisms in everybody to see what you have. And honestly, I wouldn't really care, because what's going to change? I mean, it's, you can't change it. It's just the way it is. So it's about dealing with the lifestyle regardless anyway. Right.
Right. That's why I was asking, because I think a lot of people want to, kind of like the cancer gene, I want to know if I have it, therefore, do I need to change my lifestyle, etc. It doesn't matter, right? Because you probably need to change your lifestyle anyway. You probably need to be living like that anyway. So people that want to point to a specific gene, quote unquote, thyroid gene, whatever, you're right. Does it even matter?
There are only a handful of diseases. I don't remember off the top of my head. Like 7, I don't know, a couple that are so genetically determined. Like, so if you get sick, it's because it's genetics, not because of lifestyle. Like there are those that exist, but they're rare, and that's not what people are dealing with mostly these days.
Sure. And I mean, just like through history, we can't have changed our genes too much, right? To where all of a sudden we have this explosion in autoimmunity and cancer and I mean, just MS, everything. There's just kind of this explosion in chronic disease. It's not genetics, right? I mean, it's pointing somewhere else. So no matter what those genes are, you're going to have to do the same things to get better.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Right. So let's, you mentioned gluten, and this is a big one because it was the first thing that when I was diagnosed that I was told, absolutely autoimmune thyroid disease, no gluten.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I lost you there. So is this kind of an end all be all for people with autoimmunity? And I ask this because I know the answer and I know what you're going to say, but I want you to tell the audience.
About gluten? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a real issue. And I've yet to find somebody who doesn't have an issue with it and has Hashimoto's or autoimmune disease for that matter. No, that's not true. Some people can handle it, but it's rare. It's just, yeah, agriculture, like we said earlier. But the bigger challenge with it isn't that for me. It's actually people think they can handle it because they don't have overt symptoms. And they'll run a test for it and they're negative and it happens. But I'm like, well, because you're not eating it, so you're not going to come up positive because, for one thing. But the other issue being that there are many proteins in gluten. There's gliadin, there's gluteomorphin, there's alpha, beta, gamma gliadin. There's all these different ones. And wheat germ gluten. A lot of labs aren't testing these different proteins. I mean, labs I use do it, but like most of them are checking alpha gliadin. And you could be negative to that portion of the wheat, right? But you could be reactive to the other ones.
Yeah. And
that's what gets missed. And so people falsely believe that they're not sensitive to it. So I don't even think about it. I'm like, just try to avoid gluten as much as you can. And it's pretty much a no-brainer for people because they realize they feel better to some degree and they notice a shift. So if that's happening, I don't really care what a test says.
Right. And kind of back to the, the whole gene thing, is it even worth doing a food sensitivity test to it when I think it would, I remember reading the percentage of people who feel better off gluten who have autoimmune thyroid disease. And do we know why? I mean, are there any definitive studies on why this is such a problem for people with autoimmunity, or is it a problem for everybody?
With gluten?
Yeah.
Well, we do know that the non-celiac gluten sensitivity thing is very much real, and how that's actually more prevalent than celiac disease. So it's not just them. We think that gluten only, a lot of people scientists or doctors would say, yeah, gluten only matters to celiac. Like, no, it matters pretty much anybody. Yeah. There's no bias. It could affect anybody in any way. So we got to be real about that. So what was your question? Sorry.
Just that kind of why gluten? Like, what is it about it?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, right. And so the hybridization has changed.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know that, all the genetic things we're doing with it. So that's got to be why. Because people will say they go to Italy, they eat gluten over there and they feel fine. Celiac people can eat gluten over there and they're okay. That's how you know.
Isn't that fascinating? I went to Spain a couple summers ago and I was so tempted. I haven't had gluten in over 4 years. And I was so tempted because I'd had somebody say that to me, but I was like, I'm too terrified because I've worked so hard. But yeah, I mean, I have a friend, I guess more of an acquaintance who has celiac, and she said the exact same thing. She spent 10 days in Italy and ate all the pasta and all the food and drank all the wine, and it was not an issue at all.
It's like we don't have a gluten problem, we have an American gluten problem.
Right. So what are we doing here in the States that's poisoning our food to where, all of us have gut issues and, these reactivity or these reactions to certain grains and corn. I mean, the sensitivities are off the charts. I mean, I myself did a food sensitivity test. And I was like, a lot of your other people, mine did not show up reactive to gluten. Casein was a big issue, but the first thing that I did when I started, like my healing process was stop gluten. And it was, I'm not kidding you, like immediate.
Mm-hmm.
My joint pain was slowly disappearing and I wasn't doing anything else. But it was crazy. So is that one of the first things that you tell your thyroid people to do, and what kind of results do you see?
Jumping off gluten. Yeah. I mean, they're never going to avoid it completely 100%. And that's not realistic for anything, but I say, yeah, right now you need to be really strict about it.
Yeah.
As you improve, maybe you have more leniency and you can eat it every now and then and be okay. I don't know. You'll have to test it out and see. But in the beginning, yeah, it's got to go. And dairy is a close second pretty much because of what you said, casein. And because we know that, again, coming back to the gluten thing too, why it's an issue, because of the hybridization, of course, which has then caused your immune system to flag it as something that looks like your thyroid. So that cross-reactivity happens and it's like, ooh, thyroid looks a lot like this gluten. I'm going to attack that too. And then we know that can happen, or gluten can become an issue too, because they can bind to your own human tissue.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's wheat germ gluten that does that even. And that can bind to your own tissue and that can cause an immune response just because it latches onto it, right? Kind of like Epstein-Barr latches onto the thyroid, and that's why it's an issue for people too, right? So there's different mechanisms, but that's one of them. So casein and dairy looks a lot like the cerebellum in your brain, which is why people get brain autoimmunity from that, as an example. So
that's crazy. That's one area that I was not aware of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people with autoimmune thyroid disease have brain fog and kind of these issues with memory and not being able to recall things. I mean, I remember at my worst, it was awful. I mean, I felt like I was broken. So that is something like that can attack the brain even. And I mean, that makes sense. It makes complete sense because, man, that brain fog is no joke. No joke. And I think a lot of these things you want to attribute to getting older or hormones or whatever. But again, going back to this being kind of a female problem, how do hormones play into it? What have you found in that area?
Well, yeah, I mean, the reality is that autoimmunity is largely a female dominant disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks, right? It's not fun to admit that, but so there are a number of things that are allowing for that to happen. Okay, so the sex differences being that, well, for one of them, that hormones. Okay, so we know that like females have more estrogen than men do. Okay, and every immune cell has a receptor for estrogen. So if you have a raging immune system and immune cells going around town and having estrogen dominance or just more estrogen as being a female could put fuel in the fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then think about pregnancy, right? Because you went through this yourself, as you told me earlier. And so we know that if you're pregnant, the hormones are going to change, and those fluctuations allow for people to get in remission, and they think they're better and they feel amazing, and then they get out of it, and then 2 or 3 months after postpartum, or a little bit after that, things change, and that's because things are normalizing again. Estrogens are back up again, right? It's so the body's not stupid; it knows what it's doing, and so the immune system, the autoimmune disease is still there. It's just in hibernation mode, pretty much during that time, right?
Sure.
So we have the estrogen, and again, why testosterone in men is actually immunosuppressive, and it inhibits B cells and antibodies actually. So there, the unfortunate thing with this too is that trying to think where I want to go with this, but females they generate greater antibody responses because of estrogens in these hormones they have, and why vaccines might be better. They might have better responses to vaccines, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And men tend to have bigger issues with infection, or I'm sorry, females have bigger issues with infections too. Okay.
So we just hit the jackpot, basically.
Yeah, I mean, but so men are less likely to get autoimmune disease, but we're more likely to get cancer. And so there's a trade-off, right? But,
yeah.
So I may correct myself. So women, I think I said they have more issues with infections. They have better protection against infections, obviously, because the antibody response. So that's true. But the hyperimmune response to those infections, to that they have in general, because you're making an antibody response, right, which is good, protective. But if you have an autoimmune thing going on and it's the genes that are involved with that, then that can trigger an autoimmune response, right? So that's where it's kind of like a catch-20 or double-edged sword, rather, right?
Right.
So that's one of the things with females. So you have 2 X chromosomes, we have 1, so that's why. so there's that
jackpot.
yeah. And even just the microbiome is different. There's that whole other discussion, which is so deep and a lot too.
Right. And like I said, I wish there was so much more research on, like why this is, because I mean, it is primarily a female problem. Not to say that there aren't some men that have gotten Hashimoto's and deal with thyroid disease, but it's just a crazy large amount of women. So inflammation, I know, is a huge problem in autoimmunity. You obviously want to work on keeping inflammation in the body down. So that includes inflammation can be caused by the foods that you eat, like you said, infections. So what are some of the tools? I know it's a matrix of trying to kind of weed out what works for each individual person. What are some of the big inflammatory markers? What are some of the big inflammation inducing things that people should try to look out for?
As far as autoimmunity goes, well, the first thing that, before I get into that, I would say white blood cells and your traditional CBC would be such a good thing to look at.
Yeah.
As cheap as it is, as easy to get as it is, it can give you a lot of insight as far as how your immune system is doing.
Right.
And you can even go further and check your T cells and the subsets of lymphocytes to see what's going on there, because they're the ones that are actually creating the problems. It's not the antibodies. They're a part of it, but
it's a much bigger picture.
Yeah. This is one of the things I say a lot is people get so attached to antibodies and TPO and thyroglobulin antibodies and whatever else, but there are many cases where people have higher than normal antibodies and they're in remission. So it's not that simple. And
let me stop you there. What do you consider remission? Because I think people get really hung up on this. It means I don't have antibodies anymore. What?
I care about symptomatology. So how do you feel relative to when you felt at your worst? Because if you're, I mean, listen, it's a sliding scale. It's never going to be on or off And that's what people need to understand. Like, I'm cured from, people accuse me for like curing people. I'm like, I'm not curing anybody. I've never used that word because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No one's curing anything. And when you have an autoimmune disease, you're not curing anything. It's more like a dimmer switch. It's like the lights are fully bright when you got a raging, flaring autoimmune disease. And then as you get in remission and you calm down the immune system and you remove the triggers and all that stuff, then you're like, it's like very dim or maybe dark for a moment, but it might become dim again next week because you got exposed to BPA or you got some infection, right? Yeah. So it's always ebb and flow, and you got to understand that's what happens. It doesn't mean you failed and you got to start over. It just means that you got exposed to something, your immune system decided to react, maybe didn't, cool, which is great, sign of tolerance, and then you get back to normal life. So your ability to rebound and is much quicker. That's what I find, and that's what we want. So remission would just simply be, yes, I mean, relative to your symptoms, how you're feeling, and if you feel like a state of equilibrium and normalcy again.
Right. And I remember when I started using, like, I was saying that I was in remission. It was when I wasn't thinking about it anymore. When I felt so good that it wasn't a part of my daily life anymore. I had created this new lifestyle, how I ate, what I was doing to manage my stress and all that. And it just became my daily life. And I wasn't focused on the fact that I was sick or that I had, a high antibody count or whatever. That was remission to me when I don't have to think about it and worry about it and whatnot. And at that point, having the tools in the toolbox to deal with any kind of flare that comes up. And that's another thing I think people need to understand is that you're going to have different tools in your toolbox than I have in mine to help yourself. Yeah. Right. But you can help yourself, once you start to understand what your triggers are. And again, that's going to be different for everybody. Yeah. But inflammation, again, back to inflammation, is one of those big triggers. So knowing how to kind of cool that down.
Yeah. So to answer your question, yeah. So the CBC is good, or the white blood cells, because if it's high, you got some massive activity going on. If it's low, it's not good either. Okay. But aside from that, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, CRP, C-reactive protein, okay, ferritin. These are three of the most important ones. They're acute phase reactants, so they're made immediately when there's something going on, and that will give you a wide look, non-specific look at inflammation in the body. Yeah. So ferritin is one of the most misunderstood ones, because we look at it as a marker for iron, which it is, but when you're dealing with an autoimmune disease, it's different. Yeah. In fact, when it's high, this happened recently. So my ferritin was like 90 or something. Like, that might be an issue, because or iron gets hijacked from the immune system, and so that can fuel the fire, the inflammatory process. So having a lower ferritin is actually a good thing. And instead, I'm saying look at TIBC, total iron binding capacity, and that will be a better indicator of your iron status, but not ferritin. You want that to be low. So ferritin, CRP, ESR. There are other ones, cardiovascular markers. You want to go like that route, and homocysteine and LPPLA2 and fibrinogen and liver enzymes. Like, those other things are helpful, but that's not, it's too specific, right? But like, I would say, even like LDL and triglycerides, like, those are helpful too, because of the fact that people don't realize they're actually dealing with imbalanced lipids, and that is often a corollary of Hashimoto's, because thyroid hormone affects everything. If you don't have enough thyroid hormone, it's going to affect every system in the body. So
that's really interesting too. And even, so kind of going backwards, leaky gut, your gut health, also linked to kind of these low levels of vitamins and minerals, because you're not really absorbing. So I know that's really a huge issue for people too, is like these bottomed out levels of D, magnesium, selenium, like all of these other things that you're kind of like, your tank is empty. Mm-hmm. So, there's this big, I guess, one of the big things with autoimmune thyroid disease, especially Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism is kind of weight gain, but you can actually be depleted, super skinny, have hypothyroid, Hashimoto's, because you're like tanked out on nutrients. How does this happen? How do you feel about like supplements?
How do I feel about supplements? Okay, so if you are nutrient deficient, like you're asking, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, then yes, there's going to be some level of importance with supplements for that. However, I find that most people are taking supplements for not really those reasons. So here's one thing that I actually find that's quite frustrating, I think. But to your point about deficiencies, or people think that they have a deficiency of tyrosine or selenium or vitamin A or vitamin D or iodine or whatever else that, you know, that the thyroid needs to make T4 and to convert it in T3 and the whole thing. Hashimoto's is not a thyroid nutrient deficiency problem. You're not going to change your symptoms or your disease status by taking these things. You're not, because if you did, and people do, you would have gotten better. Right? Because that's not the issue. The immune system is the problem. It's like we need to start realizing the facts here and understand that the central the issue is that needs to be in the spotlight is the immune system. So I'm not saying you can't give yourself selenium and those things can help, but don't be surprised if nothing really changes. It's not about that. And to that point with supplements of taking things because you think it's going to shift the immune system or shift the microbiome, or taking a probiotics and do this, or fish oil is going to do that. And they are helpful, right? No one's denying that. I use them all the time with clients, but to what degree? And the question being, what's the intention? Are you doing it to fix yourself and get some immediate relief, trying to get results as fast as possible, thinking that way at least? Or but you realize, oh yeah, there's a lot of other things I have to do with that in order for it to work to my benefit, right? And that's the whole point. You know, if you're stressing out about a supplement or about it working or not, or food for that matter, that's a bigger issue than the supplement or the food itself. Or it's going to affect the impact of that supplement, right? So there's this whole sort of other element to this that we haven't really considered. And again, it's coming back to, well, are people trying to associate this with some sort of quick fix protocol? Excuse me, and that's the problem. So it's like if that's where your head is all the time, then you're going to start swallowing things and buying this, and that's what a lot of people are doing. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors are giving that stuff. Practitioners are giving that out, and I usually kind of do the opposite. I'm like, I want to get you up. You know, I said this the other day, I think last week I said, if you have to continue to take a lot of supplements, it's an indicator that you're not anywhere close to being in remission or getting better. Like, you shouldn't have to take 20 things. If you still have to maintain those things to find any remote level of health or stability or feeling good, then you have a long way to go. Right. Not to, you know, yeah. So
right. That was actually the reason that I asked, because, again, it's kind of counter to a lot of practitioners, which is why I wanted you to speak to a little bit, because you kind of had a different, perspective on like the supplement front. I mean, obviously you're not saying that, you know, having those optimal levels isn't important, but relying solely on, you know, the feeling that you get of popping these pills every morning because it's been conditioned into us that we are supposed to be consuming something to get us better, kind of the pharmaceutical side. Like, is that why you're taking it?
Right. And that's why the alternative medicine side has not done much better in that regard, because it's simply just the healthier alternative natural version of pharmaceuticals that the conventional world's doing. So it has the same intention. It just looks different. Sure.
No, I'm glad you were willing to talk about that. Like I said, I've followed you for a while.
Hear it, but I'm just sorry. I'm gonna give it as it is.
No, and I love that. I love kind of like the no BS approach to how you work with your clients. So back to what you were saying about us kind of being more susceptible to infections. So we are in a pandemic. Obviously, obviously that nobody wants to get coronavirus, but we also know that it's kind of unavoidable at this point.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah.
Right. Sure. I mean, we have to be in kind of like the best shape, just as you would want to be in the best shape during flu season, during like kind of avoiding having any kind of awful reaction to any infection. How does it affect those of us with autoimmunity differently? I know you had a newsletter out recently on this particular topic. So I know this is kind of like fresh in your mind, and I wanted you to be able to kind of talk about this because I think we're all curious.
Well, we know that, I'll just say this. I think for the autoimmune population in general, not just Hashimoto's, it's kind of getting the short end of the stick here, because the virus is already going to be a problem for some people who are on the autoimmune spectrum. We know that it's already implicated in Guillain-Barré syndrome, antiphospholipid syndrome, some other few known autoimmune diseases, but it doesn't mean that it won't, there's no guarantee that it won't affect or trigger other diseases. So there is that, but that's not a surprise to me. I actually had that theory immediately back a year ago, like in March. I said, it's going to happen because it's already been documented in a million other viruses. Epstein-Barr, all the herpes viruses.
Epstein-Barr is a known trigger of.
Why are we surprised? It just happens all the time. Bacteria, mold, it's all part of that same bucket. So there's that, which is inevitable. Like, okay, well, it is what it is. You got to support yourself and work on this disease. The bigger concern for me now is the vaccine and how that might fuel that problem, or it may not. I don't know. Nobody knows. It's just a theory at this point, but that's one of the concerns that scientists are having. And I do too, because of how the mechanism of the vaccine works. Right.
Yeah.
I kind of jokingly said, we talked about GMOs earlier, and we didn't talk about it, but implied in the discussion around agriculture and gluten, but we talk about GMOs, but the vaccine is pretty much making you a GMO. And I'm not here to say that's bad or good. I'm just saying that's kind of what's happening, right? You're injecting this mRNA into your cells. So your cells are making this thing, this new protein. So that's good right now for us. And in terms of what it's doing as far as helping people, right? But what are the long-term, like 2 years down the road effects of it? And that's the question that I have. And that's my concern. It's a lot of what my colleagues are asking and who are much more knowledgeable in this field than I am and do a lot of research. But that's where my head is going. It's because we can talk about the short-term things. Oh, my shoulder hurt for 2 minutes. Like, yeah, cool. I mean, that's not the bigger issue for me. It's really what happens long-term. What happens when you get re-exposed again to another strain next year? It's going to be just like the flu, probably, where it just mutates and mutates, and we never actually develop long-term immunity to it. And that's, again, don't quote me on that, but that's probably what will happen, I think. And when
it's what all indicators are pointing to, is basically. Sure. So, and I think, people don't really want to ask these questions, because then nobody wants to talk down about the vaccine and whatnot. For me personally, when you think about, so flu shots, I'll be completely open and honest, I haven't had one since I was diagnosed with autoimmunity, because every time I would get one after, I would have this huge flare up. And it would take me weeks to kind of get back on track and feel better. So my question is, if knowing that I have a reaction to flu vaccine, for instance, with my autoimmune stuff, does exciting your immune system to that extent with a new technology, what are the risks versus the benefits of that for somebody like me, or for anybody with kind of these autoimmune issues? And I think those are all questions that we want answered, and we don't have the answers to, because it's not a technology that's been in long-term studies. It's still an experimental product. It hasn't been licensed. It's still kind of in, we are in a trial. in the population. So we don't know what these long-term effects are,
Right.
but what can the immediate effects be for somebody like me?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question. And what a lot of people, because I hear that too with people who get the flu vaccine, and my mom's not doing it. She's never done it. But the reality is that those are obviously wired and set up differently than the mRNA.
Yeah,
right?
sure. It's
But
two
like,
totally
and
different
so
things.
I think for those people who have issues with those vaccines, hence why they're hesitant with taking this new one, is because of their poor experience with the viral vaccines that have adjuvants in it. And we know it's documented in the literature. We know that it does all the adjuvants. It's called Asia, autoimmune syndrome induced by adjuvants. So like that is a known thing. It's a rare thing. It doesn't happen as common as you think, but it is a thing. And maybe that's what you went through. Or maybe it was something else. But so if that's going on, then I can see the logic behind why you would be cautious about taking this new one, but it's not for those reasons. Legitimately speaking, because there's no adjuvants in this vaccine. It's not even about that. It's about, well, what happens with the immune system when it gets re-exposed, when it sees another virus. And this is coming to the whole theory of the I don't know if you know about it, but the antibody dependent enhancement thing that's going on with
and that showed up in initial studies of previous coronavirus vaccines, right?
Yeah, I think in cells and
animals,
cell dishes, the animals, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's been, I think it was RSV and dengue and anyway, so atypical measles, I think. So like it's been seen, and it's been there, but we don't know if that's going to happen with this. I hope not. I think
so. The thing is that we won't know until a year down the road when
if they
do.
So that's
again, I think that's why I'm going to wait personally.
And that's kind of like my question with it is because well, if you trust your own immune system then to handle it and you build long-term immunity that way, it could happen. And in fact, we know there's evidence of that where you can build an immune system to this virus just naturally. But is that as good as the vaccine? I don't know. And
so I think people, and this is kind of what you were saying in your newsletter a little bit, that weigh the risk versus the benefits. I'm not in a high risk group. That I don't consider myself in a high risk group. I've been in pretty good shape. Since the lifestyle changes I've made, I've had nothing more than a cold for 4 years. My family, children, husband, all very healthy. We don't plan on taking it, but would I tell somebody else who's in a high risk category not to, it's just, it's kind of this big question mark that I think everybody's afraid to kind of talk about and ask, and dig a little bit more into. It's this big question, kind of see what happens.
Again, it's what's the least risk in my opinion. It's like, is it the vaccine or is it the virus? And it's going to come down to the person,
a personal choice. And
their health status. It's if your immune system is robust and your metabolic markers are great, then that's different than somebody who's obese and has a lot of comorbidities.
Right. That's why it's really interesting. Kind of one size fits all pharmaceuticals never made sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's a whole different podcast. But so to kind of wrap up, what are some things that we should be doing to be in the best shape? Like, what are some things that we should focus on, with our immune system, being that we are in a pandemic and we do have to live with it? It's not like we can shelter ourselves away until it goes away, because it's here.
There's so many directions to go with that, but I'm going to touch on the things that are not touched on enough. I think it's not the diet, it's not the water quality. Yes, those matter, of course. Exercising is great. Sleep is important. We know those things. You can get all those things dialed in right, and you still might not find improvement or get your immune system under control, because again, it's not as simply as doing those things. Yeah, that's a good starting point. But really for me, it's what's going on between the ears. and what's going on with that mental looping and your stress and your traumas, or that, not even discussing past traumas and issues back there, but how you're confronting the stress of 2020 still, or just the reality of life right now. People talk about turning off their news, their Twitter or their Instagram, and getting away from that news and all the information and
the bad news loop.
That's all the stuff that's we're all the input that we're getting, and it's stressing us out. Well, maybe we should turn that off in our brain, right? And that's what we're not doing. We still have this mental looping and all this chatter going on of thoughts of, I can't do this, I'm afraid of this, I'm going to be sick, I'm never going to get better, or whatever. And that's just as unhealthy as going through your Instagram feed, honestly. And so we have to be aware of that. And it's a whole different discussion of how to do that, but it's still being aware of and making a choice of trying to step away from that for a minute. And this gets into the whole mindfulness and that whole stuff of what I like to teach, but that's what it is for us. And we have to do that because it's self-inflicted suffering that does not support anybody who wants to get better with their autoimmune disease.
And that's like I said, those immeasurable components, I think are what, like you said, are being missed in these conditions. And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anger, frustration, especially this year. I can imagine that people's health during this is surprisingly getting worse instead of better. So yeah, I think that's really good advice.
The world needs more people who are not lost in their mind and lost in fear.
Yeah.
Especially for their own health issues like autoimmune disease.
Right. Yeah. So I like to end on a really positive, hopeful note. Do you have any particular like success stories that kind of are your big, just makes you feel like you're doing something good in this world?
Does it have to be autoimmune?
No, not at all.
Okay. Yeah, I have, where do I start? No, I'm kidding. Last year was a great year for PCOS for me and infertility. And that's a big deal for me because I get a lot of people that come to me without those issues. And I'm not like an infertility guru or whatever you want to call me, but I just know how to help people with these things depending on their specific issues. But if it's PCOS and lifestyle related issues, yes, I can, but not like structural fallopian tube or blockages or not that stuff. But
right.
Like, I mean, like real metabolic related issues. But I had 3 women that had infertility. I guess they came to me at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, one of my clients in particular, so all 3 of them got pregnant, which is amazing. But one of them, she had psoriasis and PCOS, and she came into this thinking, and this happens all the time, which is why I'm talking about it, but people have the trust and the confidence to do something new after being failed many times, but there's still this much of distrust, a little bit of fear, and thinking, what am I doing? Buyer's remorse. I hear all my clients say these things, but they still go forward anyway, because there's a deeper reason for why they need to do it. Right.
Yeah.
Which says a lot, but that's what happens when you've been through the gauntlet with doctors. Right. So she had done these infertility treatments. She was about to do IUI. It's really expensive. It costs more than I charge and all these sort of things. And she didn't do it, but she had miscarriages, and that's already stressful enough. And that even enhances the chances, I think, of having another one if you don't know how to deal with that stress. But she kept striving in the beginning of like, I need to get better. When am I going to get a normal cycle? When am I going to get pregnant? Like, I need a plan. I said, we worked on that because there was all that stuff, like the chatterbox, the looping, the Instagram feed, like I just mentioned, that whole thing was going on. I said, we got to log off for a minute. Okay. Because that's not the wise thing for you right now. It's not supporting your goals, your intention. Be the, as I say to clients, be the tortoise in the race, not the hare. You need a non-striving approach, and it's not going to happen any faster by just trying to tell yourself to make it faster, or tell me to make it faster. So that finally clicked, but it took a few months. And when that happened, I think literally like 2 weeks later, she got her period, ovulating for the first time in a long time, I think. And then it was October of, no, I'm sorry. She had our baby on Christmas Day. I remember that. And she sent me the photo like 2 days later, but so she got pregnant, obviously earlier that year, but so that was great. And then there was, again, the fear between that whole time of, well, is my baby going to have any health issues and this and that and the other. But anyway, so that was a great client story for me because of just where she was and how distrustful and skeptical and disappointed and just sort of the whirlwind of emotions that a lot of people I find have. And then they are like, wow, I can't believe this happened. And I'm like, yeah, now I help you go share that with someone else who has been where you are, because we're not going to be able to help make this impact on others if it's just from me. So share your story with the world.
Right. It's so hard for, I think, people to understand, which is again why I do what I do, that there are options out there for these seemingly hopeless situations, and they're probably harder and more difficult, and like you said, kind of, is this real kind of thing than people realize. But but there is hope for these kinds of situations, these kinds of diseases, these kinds of issues that people, especially women, have. So those are great stories. That's a great outcome. I love it. So where can people find you? What kind of autoimmune diseases do you work with? Who are your ideal clients, etc.?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I mean, the main diseases I'm usually working with the most are Hashi, of course, PCOS, weaving in infertility in that regard too. And eating disorders, actually, a lot of that, because over a lot of these, believe me, a lot of my clients have autoimmune disease, eating disorders, and PCOS, or two of the three, or some combination of things. So it's never just one thing, but so that stuff, trauma, of course, feeds into that, but MS, lupus, psoriasis, eczema, a lot actually, rheumatoid arthritis. Those are the big ones, honestly, Crohn's, but the autoimmunerevolution.com is where you can. So as I'm speaking here, I just got a text from my client who I just told the story about. Isn't that funny?
Way. Oh,
I haven't heard from her in a while. Isn't that crazy?
Oh gosh, she could tell we were talking about.
I'll tell her. That is so funny. Okay. Anyway, didn't mean to digress there, but
no, I'm glad you shared that.
The autoimmunerevolution.com is our website. We have other coaches on my team because my clients, a few of them have joined forces with me because they were once my client. Now they're here to help others with it, which I think is awesome. That's all about purpose, right? Absolutely. So anyway, so we have that. That's where you can find all the stuff that we do. Instagram is where I hang out a lot and talk about this stuff and more. At Justin Janoska, Janoska. Okay. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. You'll find everything else in between those two things, I think. But
awesome. And sign up for Justin's newsletter, right? That's where I get all my information from you.
Yeah. And the Hashimoto's Academy is my new thing right now, which is
good. Okay.
my hot new membership subscription. To if you're like looking for like a super, I mean, think about a Netflix subscription, but for this, to get all the real deal. If you want more information like this, like we talked about today, that's the place. And I'm doing that every month, new information. I'm helping people with labs. I'm ordering stuff for them. Even like I'm really over delivering with this because I want to help a lot of people get the truth of this. So that's, if you ever want to check that out, that's the hashimotosacademy.com. But otherwise, that's it.
Awesome. Gosh. Well, thank you so much. And keep up the good work. I mean, like I said, I've loved following you for these last few years, and we need more people out there like you who are helping people dig really deep into figuring out, what their root causes are, because again, they're not the same for every person, and individualized medicine is few and far between. So
Yeah. Thank you so much.
awesome. Well, thank you, Justin. I appreciate it, and I'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you. Talk soon.